Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
Harold Finch believed in quiet endings. After 42 years of repairing things no one else noticed, air recyclers tucked behind bulkheads, flickering conduits beneath cold metal floors, pressure seals that hummed just a little too loudly, he had earned himself a life of calm predictability. No more alarms. No more emergency lights. Just routine, silence, and maybe a good cup of tea. That was the plan. Dock 17A smelled faintly of ozone and cleaning solvent. The familiar scent of a well-maintained station. Harold stood near the boarding gate, clutching his modest travel case and printed ticket. He didn't trust digital copies and watched people rush past him. Young professionals, families, uniformed crew. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry to get somewhere important. He wasn't. He checked his ticket again. Passenger, Harold Finch. Transport, civilian cruiser Aurora Lane. Destination, Orbital Garden Ring 3. Departure, 9:40. He glanced up at the display above the gate. Boarding now, Elysian Drift. Harold frowned. Well, that's odd, he muttered. He stepped closer, squinting at the scrolling text. The font flickered for a moment, just long enough for him to catch a partial overlap of characters. Systems glitch, he assumed. Stations always had minor display issues. A soft chime sounded. Final boarding call. Harold looked around. The corridor leading to the ship was nearly empty now. A sleek vessel waited beyond the glass, a far cry from the standard civilian cruiser he had expected. Its hull shimmered with a reflective sheen, almost liquid in appearance, like it had been sculpted rather than built. He hesitated. Then he sighed. Probably just newer than I thought, he said to himself. Harold Finch had spent a lifetime trusting systems. Even when they were wrong, they were usually wrong in predictable ways. So he stepped forward. The moment he crossed the threshold, the air changed. It was warmer inside, not in temperature, but in feeling. The sterile, metallic scent of the station gave way to something softer. Subtle, almost floral. Welcome aboard the Elysian Drift, a voice said. It wasn't mechanical. Not quite human either. Smooth, perfectly measured. Harold blinked. Ah, yes. Thank you. The door slid shut behind him with final, almost deliberate sound. That's when he noticed the silence. No bustling passengers. No chatter. No luggage carts rattling across the floor. Just stillness. Well, he said under his breath, that's unusual. He adjusted his jacket and moved deeper into the ship. The corridor curved gently, its walls seamless and softly illuminated. No visible wiring. No maintenance panels. Harold instinctively ran his fingers along the surface, searching for seams, access points. Anything familiar? Nothing. Who builds a ship without access panels? He muttered. That's just asking for trouble. A faint sound drifted toward him. Laughter. Light, unrestrained laughter. Harold paused. It came from further ahead, around the curve of the corridor. He followed it cautiously, his steps echoing just slightly against the polished floor. As he turned the corner, the ship opened into a wide central lounge. And that's when everything stopped making sense. There were people. No, not just people. Women. A large group of them, scattered across the lounge in clusters. Some were seated, others standing, a few leaning casually against curved railings that overlooked a lower level. They were composed, confident, their movements deliberate, their presence unmistakable. And every single one of them turned to look at him. At once, Harold froze. "Oh," one of them said, her voice cutting cleanly through the silence that followed. "That's not who I was expecting." Another tilted her head slightly, studying him. No uniform. No clearance tag. "Civilian," someone else suggested. Harold cleared his throat. I'm terribly sorry. I believe I may have boarded the wrong ship." A ripple of reactions moved through the room. Some amused, some confused, a few clearly irritated. "Well," said a woman near the center, tall, poised, with silver-threaded hair tied neatly behind her head. "That would explain quite a bit." Harold gave an awkward half-smile. "If you could just point me back toward the exit, I'll..." Departure sequence initiated. The announcement cut him off. The lights shifted subtly, dimming for a fraction of a second before stabilizing. Harold's stomach dropped. No, no, he said, turning toward the corridor he had come from. That's not right. I just got here. Dock separation in progress. He hurried back the way he came, his steps faster now, less careful. The corridor seemed longer than before. The door at the end, his way out, was sealed. He pressed his hand against the panel. Nothing. I need this door open, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. Departure sequence cannot be interrupted, the ship replied. Harold closed his eyes. Of course it can't, he muttered. Behind him, footsteps approached, measured, unhurried. You might as well turn around, the silver-haired woman said. Even if that door opened, you'd be stepping into vacuum in about 30 seconds. Harold didn't turn immediately. He knew she was right. He'd spent too long around ships not to recognize the signs. The subtle hum of engines spooling up, the faint vibration beneath his feet. They were leaving. Slowly, he turned back. I was supposed to be on a garden ring transport, he said. Short trip. 2 weeks, maybe. The woman studied him for a moment. What's your name? Harold Finch. She nodded once. Mira Solen, Chief Systems Architect. Harold blinked. Architect of this ship, she said simply. A beat. Well, Harold said, adjusting his glasses with a small, resigned sigh, that explains why I couldn't find any access panels. A few of the others exchanged glances. You notice that already? Someone said, sounding mildly impressed. First thing I look for, Harold replied. If you can't open it, you can't fix it. Myra's expression shifted, just slightly. Interesting, she said. Another announcement echoed through the ship. Exit from dock confirmed. Course locked. Estimated travel duration. 10 years. Silence followed. Harold felt the words land like weight in his chest. 10 years, he repeated. No one corrected him. No one laughed. Instead, the room seemed to settle into a new understanding, one that included him whether he liked it or not. Harold let out a slow breath. Well, he said, looking around at the 30 strangers now watching him with varying degrees of curiosity, I suppose I should apologize properly. A faint smile tugged at the corner of Myra's mouth. Don't, she said. It's not every day our mission profile changes before we even leave orbit. Harold gave a weak chuckle. Glad I could contribute. One of the women folded her arms. What exactly are we supposed to do with him? Mira didn't answer immediately. Her gaze remained on Harold, measuring, calculating. Then, finally, we find out if he's useful. Harold straightened slightly. Well, he said, I've spent most of my life fixing things that weren't supposed to break. Harold didn't sleep much his first night aboard the Elysian Drift. Not because he was uncomfortable. The quarters assigned to him were far more refined than anything he had expected. But because his mind refused to settle. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the departure door sealing, heard the announcement again. 10 years. It didn't feel real. He sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the smooth, seamless wall across from him. No vents, no seams, no visible fasteners. Still bothers me, he muttered. A soft tone responded from somewhere in the room. Your vital signs indicate elevated stress. Would you like assistance with sleep regulation? Harold sighed. No, thank you. I prefer to lose sleep the old-fashioned way. A brief pause. Understood. He leaned back slowly, folding his hands over his chest. 10 years, he repeated quietly. By morning, if it could be called that, he had made a decision. If he couldn't leave, then he would work. It was the only way he knew how to exist. The central operations deck was alive with activity. When Harold arrived, transparent displays hovered in midair, shifting with data streams he couldn't fully interpret. The women he had met the day before were no longer a loosely gathered group. They were a functioning unit, efficient, focused, dangerously competent. Mira stood at the center of it all, issuing instructions without raising her voice. Adjust the sensor lattice before we cross the boundary field. I want redundancy on all external readings. Yes, Mira. Nav, confirm trajectory stability. Stable within 0.002 variance. Harold lingered near the entrance, unsure whether to step forward or remain invisible. He didn't have to decide. "You're early," Mira said without turning. Harold blinked. "I didn't realize I had a schedule." "You do now." She turned to face him, her expression neutral but attentive. "If you're going to remain on this ship, and you are, you'll need a function." Harold nodded slowly. "That seems fair." Mira gestured to one of the floating displays. It shifted toward him, reorganizing itself into something more readable. His profile, employment history, certifications, maintenance logs spanning decades. "You've worked on cargo stations, orbital relays, and deep space haulers," Mira said. "Mostly systems maintenance and emergency repair." "That's right. No command experience. No research background. No formal training in advanced systems architecture." Harold smiled faintly. "I was never the one designing things." Myra's gaze sharpened slightly. "But you kept them running." Harold hesitated. "Yes." A brief silence. Then Mira tapped the display. It dissolved into a schematic of the ship. Layers of systems Harold could barely begin to understand. "This vessel is self-regulating," she said. "Most of its systems are automated, adaptive, and highly resistant to failure." Harold raised an eyebrow. "Highly resistant isn't the same as impossible." A flicker of something, approval, perhaps. Cross her face. "Exactly," she said. She stepped closer. "We don't need another architect. We don't need another theorist." She paused. "We need someone who notices when things aren't quite right." Harold exhaled slowly. "I can do that." His first assignment was simple. At least, it sounded simple. "Environmental subsystem variance," Mira said. "Minor fluctuation in air composition across deck C, within acceptable parameters, but inconsistent." Harold nodded. "Where's the access point?" Mira tilted her head slightly. "There isn't one." He stared at her. "I'm sorry. The system is embedded, integrated into the ship's structure." Harold folded his arms. "Right," he said. "And when it fails?" "It corrects itself." "And when it doesn't?" A pause. Mira didn't answer. Harold sighed. "Show me the data." He spent the next 6 hours walking the ship. Not just walking, feeling it. He listened to the hum of the systems. Not the obvious sounds, the deeper ones, the subtle vibrations beneath the floor, the way airflow shifted at corners, the almost imperceptible delay in pressure equalization between sections. The crew watched him, at first with curiosity, then with growing interest. "What is he doing?" one of them asked quietly. "Listening," another replied. By the time he returned to the operations deck, Harold looked tired, but focused. "There's a timing issue," he said. Mira looked up. "Explain." "The environmental system cycles are slightly out of sync between two sectors," Harold said. "Not enough to trigger an alert, but enough to create a fluctuation." "That's already in the report," someone pointed out. Harold shook his head. "No, this is different. It's not the fluctuation, it's the cause." He moved closer to the display, gesturing as the schematic responded to him. "There's a micro delay in the system's response loop, about half a second." "That's negligible," another crew member said. Harold met her gaze. "Not over 10 years, it's not." Silence. Mira stepped forward. "What's causing it?" Harold hesitated. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but it's not random. It's patterned." He tapped the display again. "It happens every time the ship adjusts internal gravity distribution." A pause. "That's not supposed to affect environmental systems," someone said. "It isn't," Harold replied, "which means something's overlapping that shouldn't be." Myra's expression sharpened. "Can you fix it?" Harold gave a small, familiar shrug. "I can try." Fixing it wasn't straightforward. There were no panels to open, no wires to trace. So Harold adapted. He worked through the interface, slowly, carefully, learning the system as he went. Where others saw complexity, he looked for behavior, patterns, repetition. After several hours, he found it. A tiny inefficiency in how two subsystems communicated, a fraction of a delay that compounded under specific conditions. "Found you," he murmured. With Mira observing, he implemented a minor adjustment. Nothing drastic, just a correction in timing. The system responded immediately. The fluctuation disappeared. Later, in the quiet of the lounge, the mood had shifted. Harold sat with a cup of tea, real tea somehow, and stared out at the endless stretch of stars beyond the viewing window. Footsteps approached. "You were right," Mira said. He didn't look at her. "Would have been worse over time," he said. "Small things usually are." Mira folded her arms. "You weren't trained for this ship." "No," Harold said, "but I've seen enough systems to know how they behave when they start drifting." A pause. "You notice things," she said. Harold smiled faintly. "That's what happens when you spend a lifetime fixing other people's oversights." Mira studied him for a moment. Then quietly, "You're not a mistake." Harold blinked. "That's reassuring." "I mean it," she said. "Your presence here, unexpected as it is, has already improved our mission stability." He took a sip of his tea. "Well," he said, "I suppose I should thank whoever sent me to the wrong ship." Mira almost smiled. Over the following weeks, Harold became part of the routine. Not officially at first, but gradually, naturally. He was there when systems hesitated, when something felt off, when the ship behaved in ways that didn't match its own logic. And the crew began to rely on him, not because he was the most advanced, but because he was the most grounded. One evening, as the ship drifted deeper into uncharted space, a small group gathered in the lounge. Conversation flowed more easily now. "So," one of them said, leaning back in her chair, "retirement didn't go as planned, huh?" Harold chuckled. "Not exactly." "Do you miss it?" He thought for a moment. "The idea of it," he said. "Maybe." "And the reality?" He looked around the room. The quiet conversations, the subtle hum of the ship, the distant glow of stars. "No," he said. A brief silence followed. Then someone raised a glass. "To wrong ships." Harold lifted his cup. "To wrong ships," he echoed. And for the first time since boarding, the word wrong didn't feel quite so accurate anymore. Time did not pass normally aboard the Elysian drift. At first, Harold tried to track it, kept a log, marked days, noted system cycles. But somewhere between the second year and the fourth, the numbers began to lose their meaning. Out here, there were no sunsets, no seasons, no external rhythm to anchor the mind. Only the ship, only the people, only the work. By year 3, Harold no longer felt like a passenger. He had a station, informal, unofficial, but respected. A small corner of the operations deck, where system diagnostics flowed through displays he had gradually configured to his liking. Not sleek, not elegant, but readable. "You reorganize the entire interface again," Mira said one day, glancing at the layered panels hovering around him. "I simplified it," Harold corrected. "You removed half the predictive overlays." "I removed the ones that don't matter," he said. "Too much information hides the important parts." Mira studied the display for a moment. Then, reluctantly, "It's more efficient." Harold smiled faintly. "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not," she said. "I'm adjusting." The crew had changed, too. The sharp edges of first impressions had softened into familiarity. Roles remained, but personalities emerged more clearly over time. There was Lyra, who argued with the ship's AI as if it were a stubborn colleague. Anwin, who could calculate trajectory shifts in her head faster than the system could display them. Kale, who rarely spoke, but when she did, everyone listened. And Mira, still composed, still precise, but no longer distant, not with him. It was during year 5 that the first real crisis hit. Not a fluctuation, not a minor anomaly, a failure. Navigation ray is desynchronizing. Anwin reported, her voice tight but controlled. "We're drifting off vector." "That's not possible," someone else said. "It is now." Harold was already moving. "What's the response lag?" he asked. "Climbing, 2 seconds, now 3. "That's bad," Harold muttered. "That's very bad." Myra's voice cut through the rising tension. "Stabilize manually." "I can't," Anwin said. "The system isn't responding consistently." Harold reached her station, scanning the data. "It's not the whole array," he said. "Just one segment." That's enough to throw everything off, Anwin replied. Where is it? He asked. She hesitated. External housing. Harold looked up. Outside. Yes. A beat. The ship shuddered. Just slightly, but enough. Course deviation increasing. The AI announced. Mira turned to Harold. Options. He didn't answer immediately. He was already thinking, already mapping. If the system won't respond remotely, he said slowly, then we fix it locally. A pause. You want to go outside, Mira said. Harold nodded once. Someone has to. The airlock felt smaller than it should have. Or maybe it was just Harold. He hadn't done extravehicular work in years, not since his early days on cargo stations. His hands moved through motions automatically, sealing the suit, checking the pressure. You don't have to do this. Myra's voice came through the comm. Yes, Harold said calmly. I do. A pause. Then, quieter. Be careful. He smiled slightly. Always am. The outer hatch opened, and the universe rushed in. Space was silent in a way nothing else could ever be. Not quiet, not peaceful, just absolute. Harold stepped out onto the hull, his boots locking into place with a soft click. The ship stretched beneath him, its smooth surface reflecting distant starlight. Guide me, he said. 30 meters forward, Anwin replied, then left along the curvature. Harold moved carefully, each step deliberate. I see the array, he said after a moment. Panel sealed. Of course it is, he added under his breath. Can you access it? Mira asked. Harold knelt, running his gloved hand along the surface. No external latch, he said. No manual override. A pause. Then, but it's thinner here. He adjusted his position. If I apply enough force. Harold, Mira said sharply. I know what I'm doing, he replied. He braced himself, then struck the panel with the heel of his hand. Once, twice. On the third hit, something gave. A faint crack, barely visible, but enough. Got it, he said. He pried the panel open just enough to expose the internal components. And there it was, a connection, slightly misaligned, not broken, not fully disconnected, just off. Of course, Harold murmured. What is it? Anwin asked. Physical shift, he said, probably from micro-impact stress. The system thinks it's connected, but it's not properly aligned. Can you fix it? Harold reached in, carefully adjusting the component. His fingers moved slowly, precisely. Come on, he muttered. Back where you belong. The connection clicked into place. Inside the ship, the effect was immediate. Response lag dropping, 2 seconds 1. Stabilizing, Anwin said. Harold exhaled. Try it now. Full synchronization restored. The AI confirmed. Silence. Then, we're back on course, Anwin said. When Harold returned inside, the atmosphere had changed. Not relief. Something deeper. Respect. You shouldn't have had to do that, Mira said, meeting him as he removed his helmet. No, Harold agreed, but I could. A pause. And you trusted me to. Mira held his gaze. Yes, she said. That night, the lounge was quieter than usual. Not somber. Reflective. Harold sat by the viewing window again, watching distant stars drift past. Mira joined him. You risked your life, she said. Harold shrugged lightly. I fixed a loose connection. That's not all it was. He didn't respond. After a moment, Mira continued. You don't see yourself the way we do. Harold glanced at her. And how's that? She considered the question. You're a constant, she said finally. When systems fail, when plans break, when things become uncertain, you don't. Harold looked back at the stars. I've had a lot of practice, he said. A quiet pause settled between them. Do you ever think about Earth? Mira asked. Sometimes, Harold said. Less than I used to. And when this mission ends? He smiled faintly. I don't think it ends, he said. Not really. Mira didn't argue, because by then they both knew the ship wasn't just taking them somewhere. It had already changed where they belonged. Years passed. The ship moved deeper into unknown regions. The crew adapted, evolved, grew closer, and Harold Finch retired engineer, accidental passenger, became something else entirely. Not a leader, not a commander, but something just as important. The one who held things together, the one who noticed, the one who stayed steady when everything else drifted. One evening, as the stars stretched endlessly before them, someone asked, "Do you still think you boarded the wrong ship?" Harold considered the question, really considered it. Then he smiled. "No," he said, and this time he meant it. The first sign was a silence, not the usual, ever-present silence of space, but something different, a quiet that carried anticipation, like the moment before a long-held breath is finally released. "We're approaching map space," Anwen announced. Even after 10 years, her voice still held that precise clarity, but now there was something else beneath it, something almost uncertain. Harold looked up from his station. "Map space," he repeated. The words felt unfamiliar, like something from another life. The stars outside had changed. For years, they had been scattered, strange, uncharted, patterns no one recognized. But now, slowly, familiar constellations began to emerge. Known routes, known markers, civilization, home, or at least something like it. "Signal traffic detected," Lyra said. "Faint but consistent." "Can we respond?" someone asked. "Not yet," Mira said. "We maintain observational protocol until we verify alignment." Harold leaned back, slightly listening. There was again that feeling, not relief, not excitement, something more complicated. He hadn't thought much about Earth in years. At first, he had imagined it constantly. Quiet parks, slow mornings, the simplicity of a life without urgency. But over time, those images had faded, replaced by something else. The hum of the ship, the rhythm of shared work, the presence of people who had become, somehow, essential. "You're quiet," Mira said, stepping beside him. Harold smiled faintly. "That's not new." "Not like this," she said. He considered that. "Feels strange," he admitted. "Getting close to something I used to want so badly. And now—" He didn't answer right away. "I don't know," he said finally. Mira nodded, as if that was answer enough. The official confirmation came hours later. "We've reached the boundary," Anwen said. "Recognized territory. Relay beacons are active." A soft ripple moved through the ship. Not celebration, not quite, but something close. 10 years. Completed. "Prepare for contact," Mira ordered. The crew moved with practiced precision. But there was a difference now, a subtle shift in energy. Less urgency, more awareness. As if everyone understood that this moment mattered in a way no system or mission parameter could define. Harold found himself drifting, literally and figuratively, toward the observation deck. The same place he had stood countless times over the years. The same place where everything had slowly changed. The stars outside were brighter now, closer, familiar, and yet he felt no pull toward them. "You can go back, you know." The voice came from behind him. Harold didn't need to turn. "I assumed as much," he said. Mira stepped beside him, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. "Once we establish contact, they'll arrange transport," she said. "You'll be returned to Earth, or anywhere within the network." Harold nodded. "That was the plan," he said. "Your plan," Mira corrected gently. A pause. "Yes," he admitted. They stood in silence for a while. 10 years of shared space compressed into a single, quiet moment. "You'd be leaving a lot behind," Mira said. Harold let out a soft breath. "I already did that once," he said. "I just didn't realize it at the time." Mira turned slightly toward him. "And now you do." "Yes." The comm system activated softly. "Incoming transmission request," Lyra announced. "They've identified us." Mira didn't move. "Accept it," she said. A brief pause. Then, "Unregistered vessel Elysian drift. This is Central Relay Authority. Please confirm identity and intent." The voice was clear, official, familiar in a way that felt distant. Mira stepped forward. "This is Elysian drift, long-range exploratory vessel. Mission duration, 10 years. Returning from deep space survey." "Identity confirmed," the voice replied. We are preparing reintegration protocols. Please transmit crew manifest. Mira hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Then, transmitting now. Harold felt it then. The moment, the turning point. Not in the mission, in himself. You don't have to decide immediately, Mira said quietly. He smiled. I think I do, he said. She didn't argue. The transmission continued in the background. Formalities, confirmations, procedures. A path back. A way home. Harold stepped closer to the viewing glass. He could almost imagine it now. Earth. Quiet mornings. Stillness. The life he had once wanted so badly. He closed his eyes. Tried to feel it. Tried to want it. But all he could hear was the ship, the hum of its systems, the faint rhythm of movement beneath his feet, the presence of people who had become more than strangers, more than crew. He opened his eyes. I don't think I belong there anymore, he said. Mira didn't look surprised. No, she said softly. You don't. The comm system chimed again. Reintegration transport will arrive within standard cycle. Prepare any non-crew passengers for transfer. A pause. Harold let out a small laugh. Non-crew, he repeated. Mira glanced at him. You stopped being that a long time ago. Another silence. Then, there's a proposal, Mira said. Harold looked at her. For another mission, she continued. Further out. Longer duration. Voluntary crew only. He raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, he said. Highly resistant to failure. Mira allowed herself the faintest hint of a smile. Not even close. Harold looked back at the stars. Beyond the familiar. Beyond the mapped. Out there, where things broke. Where systems drifted. Where something like him mattered. Well, he said slowly, adjusting his jacket out of habit more than necessity. I suppose I've already proven I'm very good at boarding the wrong ship. Mira folded her arms. Or the right one, she said. He glanced at her, then back at the stars. The comm system spoke again. Please confirm passenger transfer. A beat. Mira looked at him. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. Harold took a breath. Steady. Certain. No transfer, he said. Silence. Then, confirmed, the voice replied. Something shifted in the room. Not dramatic. Not loud. But real. Mira nodded once. Welcome to the crew, she said. Harold smiled. I had a feeling you were going to say that. Hours later, as the Elysian drift adjusted its course once more, the familiar stars slowly drifted behind them. And ahead, only the unknown. Harold stood at the observation deck again. Same place. Different man. Funny, he said quietly. Mira stepped beside him. What is... I spent my whole life trying to slow down, he said. And now... He watched the stars stretch endlessly forward. Now I don't want to stop. The engines hummed. The ship turned. And together they moved forward. Not toward home, but toward something better. Something chosen. Something earned. And Harold Finch, retiree, engineer, accidental traveler, never boarded the wrong ship again.